How's it going, guys? Back in here again today for edition number 2 of the opinion series that I'm going to be doing. This week we will still be talking about safety. This time with every car outside of sprint cars. The last one that we did was all about sprint car safety, and this is going to be based off a race that I went to this past weekend, which was the Magnolia State Cotton Pickin' 100 at the Magnolia Motor Speedway in Columbus, Mississippi. And I was there, and while being in the stands, I was noticing some things that kind of caught my eye from a safety perspective. So today we'll be talking about some of those, primarily talking about the seats in factory stocks, street stocks, and late models. And that'll be a lot of what today's video consists of. So, um, I hope you guys enjoyed the last video. I got some couple of good responses off of it, and I'm hoping this series will become something that can be informational and also something that we can eventually have discussions about and not necessarily bring about some change, but have some conversations that need to be had. So, let me start off by saying late models and street stocks and factory stocks, the cars with closed fenders, tires are all inside, are the safer part of racing on the dirt scale, just because there's more car around the driver, and that's good and that's fine. That everything works like it should in that regard. The difference is that a lot of times in street stocks and factory stocks, the requirements for seats are generally not very stringent. In generally your late model classes, whether that's a 602 Sportsman, a 604 Crate, I wouldn't say Sportsman, but a 604 Crate class, or the super late models, generally, generally, of course, you have to have a full containment seat in a late model chassis. That is very different from street stocks and factory stocks, where you don't have to have a full containment seat in most cars. What you're going to notice today is I'm using a lot of terminology. I'll have some pictures up and around here of different seats. Full containment seats, the big deal with them is that they completely enclose the driver inside of basically the seat compartment. There's your standard seat. Think about the seats in your car, in your daily, excuse me, in your daily driver car. It's just behind you. Maybe you got some bolstering at your hips and in your sides to help you in the seat a little bit. Those are generally pretty hard to come by, but occasionally they're there. Those are your sporty style seats with a little bit of bolstering. A uh, a race seat, not a full containment race seat, just a standard race seat, has sides that come up off of your legs on either side to keep your legs contained, and then generally something that sticks out between kind of your ribs and hip area that sticks out and contains the midsection of your body. They have nothing for your head, generally speaking, for your run of the mill all aluminum race seat that you would put in something like a factory stock or a street stock. There's nothing up around the head area to sustain your head, which means your head, helmet and all, can do whatever it's going to do, whether that's bounce around or whatever the case may be. The only thing holding your head is a neck restraint of some kind if it's required. Generally, in street stock classes, it is not required because of the cost of a good neck restraint system. Last time I looked, a Hans device, which is what NASCAR and the NHRA use, are between $800 and $2,000, depending on whether or not you get one custom formed for your shoulders. And that's a lot of money for a guy with a factory stock or a street stock car that he could sell his entire operation, trailer and all, for about 10 grand. So we'll keep in mind the price. So your average late model chassis, we'll go ahead and go with the brand new stuff. If you call up, say, Rocket Chassis, for example, and you want a full rolling chassis, this is not counting an engine, a transmission, or anything. This is just the chassis and the shocks and the body on it. You're looking at $40,000. Racing is expensive. That's the way it is. Granted, that's a brand new chassis, and most guys aren't running brand new chassis unless you're running a big show super late model car. Those cars are required to have full containment racing seats, which I will put a picture of somewhere around here. A full containment race seat has support for not only the hip and rib region of the driver, but it comes up around his shoulders and has head protection to keep his head from going side to side in the event of a rollover crash. Generally speaking, everything is taller, they have more padding, and they're built a little tougher, which in the event that you actually need the seat to do its job, all of those things are an added bonus. But a good full containment race seat is going to cost you anywhere between $2,000 and I've seen some as far as expensive as $7,500. So that's a lot of money to be putting into a $10,000 race car just for something for you to sit on. But it goes back kind of the idea of the sprint car video, which is how much is your life worth to you? Because in the event of a wreck, you're going to want everything you can possibly have to keep you as safe as you possibly can be. So I'll break it down a little bit. Street stock and factory stock cars are generally speaking based off of an original street car subframe and built off of it. They call this subframe a stub. A lot of common ones are mid-80s Monte Carlos, 70s Camaros, and some people run newer Mustang and Camaros, but generally speaking, they're based off a stub of a little older car. They build a chassis off of that, and then that is the car. On the other hand, most late model classes are completely chassis built on a jig. Everything is designed and engineered to work a certain way. That's what makes them late models. That's what makes them be able to do what they do. You could put a 900 horsepower engine in your factory stock car and it's still not going to run anywhere near as fast as a late model just because of chassis design. So, why do people run street stocks? Why do people run factory stocks? Well, simple answer is they're a whole lot cheaper than a late model is. And you can have just as much fun racing a street stock and a factory stock, spending between a quarter and half as much as what you would running a late model for a full season, and have just as much fun at a racetrack. But here's what a lot of people fail to think about when they're building a quote-unquote budget race car. It is their personal safety. Like I talked about in the last video, racers just want to go fast. They're really not worried about what it does to them when they aren't going fast. So in your average factory and street stock, we already talked about the seats not having head protection. So let's just say, for example, a race starts it's a double file restart, and for whatever reason, you're on the outside and the guy on the inside hits you, and you slide up and hit the wall. Well, in that event, your head is first going to snap one way from getting hit, and then when you hit the wall, it's going to snap the other way. And even if you have a neck restraint, that's going to put a lot of force into your neck and into your head region. It's also very likely going to pull your trapezius muscles and other muscles that help hold your head up, because helmets are heavy. That's just the way it is. Helmets weigh a lot, and even with a neck restraint, that's a lot of force going that way on the muscles that hold up your head. That is with your average non-full containment racing seat, which is not going to contain your head and your shoulders. That's something else. You have your arms up in front of you on the wheel, you hit that wall, your whole body's going. Many guys nowadays are required to wear arm restraints on their fire suits so that their arms don't go free, because of a similar situation where you hit something hard enough to let go of the wheel, you want your arms to stay together. Because if this one goes way up behind you and this one's still stuck down low, you're going to tweak your back. You have a very high risk of either the car landing on your arms, or your arms getting severely damaged in muscle strains and tears. So, why do more expensive cars require the full containment seats? Well, a lot of it is speed. Generally speaking, your late model cars will go faster, whether it's a 602, 604, or a super late model car. They are typically going to be the fastest cars that you will see unless sprint cars are at the same event. But I digress back to the fact that they cost more, and so it's a more marginal cost when you have a, say, we're not even going to talk about the most expensive. Let's say you have a $20,000 race car. Well, putting a $4,000 seat into it doesn't sound nearly as bad to putting a $4,000 seat into a $4,000 car. It just doesn't seem to make sense. But how much is your life worth? So, part two. at this race that I was at this weekend, there was 165 cars in the pits, 60 super late models, 40 some 604s, 30 some 602s, and I believe there were 40 some street stocks and factory stocks broken down in different ways. What I noticed is that every late model car that hit the track, the driver had a full containment seat, which for a late model is, and this is going to be backwards for you guys because of the video, but in a late model, that has a head restraint up the right side to generally about the where the visor would start on a driver's helmet, so approximately a couple inches past the ear space area, and then a few inches further this way. Now, on your driver's side, it will not extend quite as far because if you've ever seen a late model chassis, I'll throw a picture of one right here, there's not a lot of space for the driver to get out of the car. Everybody looks at a NASCAR seat and it comes up all the way on both sides. Well, that's because the opening in the window is much larger for the driver to get out in the event that he is in a hurry. In a late model, that space is very small. Generally, well, not generally, but in a lot of cases, the driver cannot get out of the car with his helmet on. Well, he can, but it's not very easy for him to clear the body panels and the roll cage bars while still wearing his helmet and all of his restraint gear. Not saying that's good or bad, but it is something to consider when you're talking about safety. Because, first of all, egress, which is a big fancy word for get the heck out of the car. In the event that the driver needs to rapidly get out of the car, if he can't easily get through that hole, that's a problem anyway. But we're talking about seats in this video, so I'll digress back to the topic. When that seat comes forward, it comes forward enough to help on the driver's side and does a lot of help on the passenger side of his head. So what that support does for his shoulders and his head both, like I said, I'll throw up another picture right here of a full containment seat so that you guys can see exactly what I'm talking about. But where the bracing comes up around the driver's shoulders and around his head makes it to where in that same situation I just described, driver gets hit on the inside, head bounces off this side of the seat, and then he hits the wall. Instead of his head going way over all the way off until his helmet hits his shoulders, his head goes that far into a pad and that far into a pad. And it saves a lot of strain on the driver's neck. So why is the neck so important? Obviously, it holds up the head. Everybody has heard, and it's pretty general common knowledge, that neck restraints weren't a big deal until Dale Earnhardt died in his wreck at Daytona in 2001, which is completely true. Nobody cared about the head and neck bouncing around before Dale Earnhardt died, and the reason why is because it is commonly understood that what killed Dale Earnhardt was hyperextension of his neck, basically. When he hit the wall, his head moved so far that it destroyed his neck, and that's basically what killed him, was brain trauma and such associated with that. So then it comes to, okay, now my head's not moving as far, but how hard am I hitting it? Generally speaking, you don't want your head to move that much. If you look at a race car, you have harnesses, either 5, 6, or 7 points, depending on your series. Most dirt track series require a 5. Some guys go above and beyond to a 6 and a 7. That 5-point harness has 2 over your shoulders, 2 from either side of your hips, and an anti-submarine strap that comes up between your legs. Those straps, when properly fastened and properly tightened down, I have a set of 5-point harnesses in my personal Camaro that when I strap down into it, I cannot move at all. I mean, if I move a half an inch, I would be amazed. However, without something to support my head in the event of a crash, my body won't go anywhere, but my head definitely will. Again, strain on the neck and strain on the head is bad. We've all heard of Dale Earnhardt Jr. and all the talks and the science that and the studies that he's done on concussion protocols and concussions in racing because of how much your head moves in a massive incident. Think about this. Even in the slow, say a quarter-mile dirt track, most of your late models will be going anywhere between 60 and 80 miles an hour getting into the corner. If something breaks on that car and you hit the wall, or heaven forbid that car flips over, the last thing you want to do is your head be moving around 3 to 4 inches at a time, bouncing off of things because you don't have the proper equipment. So, the seats. Why is the seat important? Well, it's kind of the base of all your safety gear. You can have all of the Hans devices, all of the straps, all of the harnesses that you want. If you're moving because your seat is not high quality, you're not going to be very well off in a crash. Number two, why is a full containment seat so important? Because if the upper half of your body is moving, whether the lower half is or not, that puts a lot of strain on your back, that puts a lot of strain on your neck, and it can really screw up your head. Just ask Dale Jr. And Dale Jr. has the most expensive safety equipment money can possibly buy, and he still had issues with getting concussions. So, here is the point of this video. You might ask, why do I care so much about seats? And it's very simple. Seats matter to the lives of drivers, and if there's no drivers left, there's no racing left. Yes, I get the seats are expensive. One of the most popular brands of full containment racing seats is a company called Butler Built. To get a full containment seat from Butler Built to fit into a dirt late model race car, you are looking at between $2,500 and $4,000. $2,500 being the cheapest one they offer, $4,000 being one of the more expensive ones they offer. That's just the seat. That's not harnesses. That's not a race car. You're looking at, we'll call it an average of $3,200 to have just the seat. It makes it really simple, in my opinion. Look at your street stock guys. They have just as hard as wrecks as everybody else. Your factory stock guy hits that wall the same way everybody else does. Why are these series not requiring these what I would call cheaper race cars to have the same safety equipment as everybody else? It doesn't make sense. The drivers need to be protected, whether he's in a $120,000 super dirt late model that's running the World of Outlaws, or if he is in the local car at the local track. All it is rules. It's just a rule that keeps drivers safe. The seat is vital to their safety. It is absolutely, probably outside of the harnesses holding him there, it is the number one part of the car that will protect the driver, is the seat. The seat must be up to snuff. It must be strong enough and big enough and support the driver in the ways that he needs to keep him safe. Now, many people will argue that, well, you get into a full containment seat, you can't see out of the right side of the race car. And that, my friends, although partially true, makes very little difference on the racing. Because if you've ever seen a dirt car pitches in sideways, and so when you get that car sideways, you can rotate your head just enough. You can still turn your head just fine in a full containment seat. Turning your head is not a problem. It contains your head from going this way. You can still look left and right all day long. So visibility, although slightly decreased, is not that bad. But it's a safety thing, and it has to remain a big deal. If you want to see guys stay safe on the local level, I'm talking the guys that run that nobody ever talks about. The factory stocks and the street stock guys that most fans don't even stick around to watch. The guys that don't have a ton of money in their cars. They're not turning laps crazy fast. They're racing just as hard. Sometimes the racing's even better. Those guys need the safety as much as everybody else does. And they're not going to go out and buy a $4,000 seat that literally doubles the value of their car until somebody makes them do it. Rules officials that may someday see this video require full containment seats in every series at every track in this entire country. It just makes sense. It is a safety thing. It is saving drivers, and even though it's expensive, it's totally worth it in the long run. So, that's my idea. That's my opinion about seats. Full containment or nothing. You're spending money anyway. You might as well go all the way. That's my opinion, guys. Thanks for watching. Hope you have a great rest of your day.